Welcome, everyone, to the life of beautiful Camille Clifford. Camilla Clifford was born in 1885 in Norway. Her mother died, and her father wasn't suitable to take care of the family, so she went to live with her aunt, Mrs. Frans Ottersen, in Christiania, Norway. The Ottersens legally adopted Camilla, only to make a household drudge of her. She could do the work of two ordinary servants, and she could sing sweetly while doing it. Learning of the girl's fate, a relative of Mrs. Schilling of Boston sent money for her passage to America. Camilla was 14 years old when she boarded the ship Pavonia, sailing from Liverpool, England. She soon found herself in the ill-smelling steerage of the ship, but for her it was the beginning of life anew. She cast off the hated name of Ottersen, which she associated with only drudgery, and insisted on being known as Camilla Clifford. Her graceful beauty caused Stuart Nelson, a fatherly man, to take her out of steerage and give her comfortable quarters in the second cabin. Then the captain fell under the spell of her childish charms, and soon most of the first cabin passengers were in the same state. When Camilla arrived at Boston, she was taken to the home of Mrs. Schilling, who treated her like a daughter. She appreciated her new situation, but she soon grew restless and wanted to go out to service. Reluctantly, Mrs. Schilling consented, and Camilla was promptly engaged as a parlor maid at the Carey home on Cape Cod. While she went about her humble duties, she could see happy people passing along the road in automobiles. As she scrubbed the steps of the Carey summer home, she would never have dreamed that 2 or 3 years later, she herself would be whirling along in one of those automobiles. She studied English until she lost all trace of her Norwegian accent. She got a job as a seamstress, then a salesgirl in a toy store, and in January 1903, she was transformed. Morocco Bound was playing at the Park Theater in Boston, and supers, or extras, were advertised for. Camilla applied and was engaged. This proved the turning point in the career of the little immigrant. At this point, she was also advised to drop the A off her name and add the E. She was now known as Camille. When that brief engagement came to an end, she enlisted as super again in another show. In a few weeks, that company broke up. She then worked at a candy and cigar stand at the Columbia Theater. 6 weeks later, Henry Savage, a producer, was organizing his Prince of Pilsen company. Camille applied for and got a chorus position. Soon, though, she was abruptly dropped from the show. She then joined a company touring New England. She was successful with the summer tour and then was called to New York for a job in the chorus of a show. In a short year, she had changed from a rollicking young girl to the grace, poise, and form of a young woman. She had acquired a magnetic personality that affected everyone she came in contact with. Mr. Savage re-engaged her for the Prince of Pilsen, which toured large cities in the United States. She scarcely spoke a line. It was sufficient for Camille to merely walk across the stage to command the admiration and attention of the house. Her greatest success was in impersonating a Gibson Girl. The Gibson Girl was described as tall and willowy, a stately creature of tip-tilted head, a swan-like throat, and a proud demeanor. They were to have an hourglass figure, a mass of hair combed into a pompadour with a coy curl over the left shoulder, wasp waists, and trailing dresses, among other things. To me, the pose looked like they were looking down their nose at someone. Camille had the look down pat. The theatrical company went to London with the play, and there she became the chief beauty of the English stage. The splendid figure she had acquired while hoeing potatoes and scrubbing floors made the other stage beauties seem artificial by contrast. So rich was her natural coloring that she needed no makeup. In 1906, Camille was in a show in London with a big star named Edna May. Edna was obviously the star of the show and earned $1,000 a week. She apparently was acting temperamental and couldn't choose from the many songs offered to her, so the producer offered a song to Camille. She was only too happy to sing the song. It was entitled, "Why Do They Call Me a Gibson Girl?" Edna May was very upset because Camille, an upstart, stole the show with that song. The managers of the show posted a bill in the theater lobby reading, "Miss Clifford will appear tonight positively at 10:10. Hundreds of men about town would come late, pay the price of admission just to hear Camille sing, "Why Do They Call Me a Gibson Girl?" Edna May hated being upstaged, and she left the show in anger. Later, Camille and Edna May became the subject of a comedy sketch making fun of the situation, mainly making fun of Edna May. Soon, Camille was besieged with invitations and offers of marriage. For a time, she kept them all at a respectable distance, but handsome young Henry Lyndhurst Bruce, son and heir of Lord Aberdare, won her heart. When Lord Aberdare angrily refused to consent to the marriage, she put Bruce off. Finally, Bruce overcame her hesitation, and they were married. Young Bruce took his bride to see his father in the hope that her beauty would melt his heart. They arrived in an automobile rather late at night at the family seat, Dufferin Castle. The old nobleman came out into the baronial hall to meet his obstinate son. For a moment he could hardly speak with rage. Then he pointed to the door and told his son to go and take his music hall wife with him. Young Bruce resigned his commission in the army in order to support his wife. He became a not very successful automobile salesman, and Camille went back to the stage. When Camille became pregnant, she quit the stage. She bore a daughter, but the child only lived a few hours. The couple mourned the death. They were having trouble paying their bills. They were in real distress. After a few years, Lord Aberdare relented somewhat and gave them an allowance of $2,500 a year, sufficient to keep them in comfort. But they were by no means received back into the full favor of the aristocracy. Then came the Great War. Every man qualified to serve as an officer was eagerly accepted by the government, and young Bruce, who had been compelled to leave the army through poverty, was appointed a captain in the Royal Scots Regiment. His departure for the front brought his wife and his father nearer than they had ever been before. Camille was accepted into society with her father-in-law's love and support. Captain Bruce served with distinction through the great Battle of Ypres. At the very close, he was shot dead under a flag of truce that the Germans either could not see or did not care to see. Death deprived Camille Clifford of the husband she loved dearly, but it gave her the social position which he had originally promised her. In October 1917, Camille married Captain John M. J. Evans. They had a long and wonderful marriage. They had a son who grew, became a captain in the military, and married well. Camille was a racehorse enthusiast and owned many winning horses. She had a position in society and money enough to pay £34,000 for a horse. In 1938, £34,000 to pay for anything was an exorbitant amount of money, equal to over $2.5 million today. An article in 1950 spoke about Miss Clifford, who helps her husband, Brigadier J.M.J. Evans, to farm 1,000 acres at Wishinger Lodge. She stated that, "My husband and I were dining at home with a friend when he heard noises. My husband phoned the police, who were here in a few minutes. The thieves dropped my mink and other furs as they ran, and only got away with some worthless imitation jewelry. All my real jewels are kept in the bank. This is the second time in 6 months that we have been burgled." Brigadier Evans died in 1957. Camille truly lived a fairy tale life. She lived to be 86 and died one day before her 87th birthday in 1971. I hope you enjoyed this story as much as I enjoyed getting to know Camille. Subscribe for more stories. Thank you for listening. Bye.